this mic, this table, the tea I have in here, my body is all one with the environment around me. I mean, we're all connected, literally, electrically, and it can reverberate very profoundly. And so the electricity that's running through our nerves also has a magnetic wave resonance, by a detectable residual electric diffusion, and it passes around and creates this environment around in the cells, which is carried through the framework of the underlying framework of the cells, in the matrix, and then also in the supporting cells around the nerves called the glia. And I know this is getting a little nerdy, and I'll try and steer it, but think about it as you have scaffolding, and you have a power line, right? You have one of those huge power lines with those generators, and you have the scaffolding that holds up the power line. Well, that current that goes through that cable, there's going to be at some level, and depending upon how coated the cable is, some residual electrical field that's going to emanate from that down the scaffolding and into the ground, or unfortunately into the houses, into the people that might be below the electric line. But you're going to have these currents that are very defined running through the cables, that are going to be relayed from these transformers, and this is exactly like what's happening in our body. And those residual electricity in that current is going to go down that scaffold. And it creates an electrical environment beyond that cable. And that's exactly what's happening in our bodies. Well, this travels through the fascia, and if you have distortions in your fascia, it actually creates a distortion in the environment. And going in there and changing the quality of the fascia and doing this deep tissue work, and Dr. Conway does this, he does it with his fingers, and he sort of pioneered one of the really more effective fascial stripping techniques called myofascial distortion, which is really, or disruption, sorry, not distortion. Sorry, Doc. Myofascial disruption technique. And he gets in there, and you can say he's disrupting the structure physically, as he's opening up those adhesions, the stickiness between the tissues, and opening up the casing and the filling in the muscle. But he's also disrupting the disruptions. He's clearing up that noise so the signal can get to the muscle more clearly. It's a signal to noise ratio. So the fascial work is something that can shift your body back into position by removing the tension, by removing the tightness, by removing that restriction, so the body can gravitate its posture, so that all of those muscles can release their stiffness, because you release the casing which is bound for binding that muscle. And as your body just gravitates its position, because you're releasing this, your shoulders drift back, and when you smash your traps, you put a lacrosse ball at the top of each shoulder, where you'd be carrying a backpack, back behind the shoulders, what we call the traps. Those big, on a bodybuilder or a football player, it's what looks like a kite coming off their neck and down their back. On the back of that kite, those manly traps. And strongmen, they talk about the yoke, carrying like an ox yoke. Well, that builds those big muscles behind the shoulders, those traps. Well, those become very overactive when your posture is disrupted from sitting and curving forward. Well, if you can really get in deep with some sort of an implement there, a baton, having someone push in with their fingers, you can really get them to drop, and they'll gravitate back, like the chest will rise. But also, I like to use it a la Dr. Conway, in that I use it as a nervous system hacking tool. And as we go forward in learning sessions on this podcast, I'm going to talk to you about how I do that. The psoas was a perfect example. The hip flexors, releasing hip flexors to neurologically open up the hamstrings so that you can then access them, as I call opening the window. You need to get to the nervous system, but you've got to pass through, first the window, then the storm window, then the screen to be able to get to the outside. And I peel these windows away progressively with a system I call ROAP, R-O-A-P. release, open, anchor. Anchor can also be activate. So interchangeably, it's usually release, open, activate. Sometimes you need to anchor it into your effect into the core of the torso, and then the pattern. So we'll kind of go over more of those, but release is what we're talking about tonight. Release is this working on tissue quality, and you do that through that hydration, through good movement, and um, through that deep tissue work. And so we want to work on that tissue quality to get you to be able to turn on. You can't turn on beef jerky. You can't contract. Beef jerky is in rigor mortis, and it's all locked down. So you can't get a cadaver to fire up its muscles, right? So we want to restore the length of the muscle to its resting length so that we can actually fire it then up and use it properly. And so we got to release it. Then we got to open it, which, opening up your positions we'll talk about next time, with mobilizing. Mobility, by the way, it's just a cool word that just means movement ability. And you can't move if you're not open enough to move, if you're all kind of locked up. But if you're bound up, you got to smash it. You got to release your tissues, and you got to open up your position. Then you can activate the right muscles. You can anchor it with a good core and steady posture and bracing, and then put it in a good pattern. So that's my philosophy. And I kind of wish it was something. It seems very complex, but it's really simple. Just healthy tissue shouldn't hurt. You shouldn't get on a softball and it just make you want to cry. And I really someday want to make a montage video of people's what I call smashing phase, which is when they get on a lacrosse ball and you just some people scream, some people scrunch up, some people have all these different reactions. Some people like lose their breath. It's like it becomes almost comical, but they're helping. You're helping them, and it's this kind of funny dichotomy that you're standing there being like, I'm helping you, but I mean they're just in horrible pain. But it's a good pain. It's a disruption pain. It's not a injury pain. And once you go through that, you start to find that it abates after a while. You go to harder limits, you get deeper. It doesn't hurt anymore. But some things I see people doing wrong with foam rolling, some common smashing problems, is that people don't hold their posture. You shouldn't be mush. Like, you should always be organized. Your hips should always be, your shoulders should be always over your hips, or your hips under your shoulders. Your pelvis should be tucked under you. Your head should be in line with your body, your ears over your shoulders. I mean, your feet should be straight. It's not an excuse to just let your body die on some sort of torture device. You've got to maintain some sort of integrity in the pelvis and in the shoulder and in the spine. So please keep your posture. Please pay attention to this. You got to be mindful. Two is people sit there and they clench and they hold their breath. But part of the relaxation benefits come from utilizing the breath during the application of the pressure and the rocking back and forth into the tissue and the moving. So breathe. Just breathe. When you hit a point of pain, exhale. Breathe out. Consciously breathe into the ball, into the area of restriction, and then breathe out that tension. It is mindful, and it is yogic, and it is zen, and it is what movement and real athleticism is about mind-body connection. And you take that into your smashing work. So maintain good posture, have some integrity, breathe through the process, become mindful, take those moments to become more one with your body. Notice if one side is worse than the other. Spend more time on that side. If you're weak on one side, put more strength work on that side. I do more mobility and smashing work on my right side, and I do more activation and actually just general strength work on my left. I have that in balance, and It's not going to do you any good to increase everything evenly if you're imbalanced. You're just maintaining the imbalance. I don't really hear enough people talking about doing unilateral, otherwise single limb or single-sided work on one side instead of doing it evenly on both. Instead of doing 10 reps on my right and 10 reps on my left, I'll do 5 reps on my right and I'll do 10 reps on my left. So it's something that I emphasize. Sometimes I'll just do left-sided work in between bilateral work. So the other day I had one of my athletes, Chewy, doing a Bulgarian, deadlift, which is their leg up, his back leg up on a bench, and doing single leg deadlifts. We're picking up a kettlebell off the ground, and in between his actual deadlift work. And that was actually after doing a whole lot of ham activation and some other stuff, which we'll talk in future podcasts. But doing that stuff is to create balance. Your goal in training is you're going to come into the session, into your workout, into your training environment with all this imbalance and just weird stuff going on in your body, and it's going to be very uneven. And your goal is to bring yourself to a very level, even base of tension throughout your entire body. So those things that are loose, you need to add tension. Those things that are tense, you need to decrease tension until you find a balance in which everything exists in a tension balance. So don't make tight the things that are already tight, and don't make loose the things that are already loose. Some things you might need to smash, you might need to open, and some things you might need to fire up. So find that place where you can bring everything to just level, and then your goal following the session is, with all the tension you've now created, is to bring yourself back to that pre-workout state. The faster you can return your level to a constant state of balance and healthy amounts of resting tension that helps you to be posturally in control but relaxed in your limbs is extremely important. So go for balanced tension at the beginning, and then rebalance and try and get that same balance and tension post-workout. And you do whatever you have to for that. The smashing work, it's great for releasing that connective tissue that might be holding the muscle captive, because muscles contract and relax. That's it. That's it. You can't elongate a muscle. You can either contract it or relax it. So why is it quote unquote shortened? Because it's holding properties of contraction. It's not fully relaxed. Or the connective tissue surrounding it is so bunched up that it's actually like taking a sausage and twisting it in the middle, and the casing being pulled so tight that the insides of the sausage, which is meat or muscle, can't be expressed at its length that it desires. So you need to open up the connective tissue to relieve pressure on the actual muscle tissue so it can at least get to its resting length. And then you need to consciously relax the nervous system to allow tension and contraction cycles to drop out of the muscle so that it can sit at a quality resting level. And then with water, so it's in a hydrated state. That's quality tissue. That's tissue that's ready and rearing to do great things and to take you a long way in your life. We're coming up on the end of my time. I had no idea it was going to go this long. I hope you hung in there with me. I wish Penlay the best, the Chocolate Lab, the Unbreakable Lab. I hope the family that who had the chip, who placed the chip in him, and had an identification number attached to him. I hope they loved him, and I hope he just had run away and they hadn't abandoned him. And thank you to Dr. Conway and to everybody who's come before us, and I hope to further that work. Please check out the videos on Coach Scott Frost, a YouTube channel at Coach Scott Frost, and that's Scott with 2 T's. Subscribe. I'm really excited to bring you guys some health, some wellness. Email me some questions. Check out my site, coach.frost.com, and we'll have more coming soon.